Hey, welcome back to More Noise. I've been listening to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard ever since Ezra from Earthtone showed me them in East London where we were both working back in 2013, 2014. He played The River from Quarters over the pub speakers, explaining to me the whole idea behind the record. 4 songs, all the same length, an album split into quarters. The River being what has stayed as my favourite from that record. And from that point, I was pretty sold on the band. And what was apparent about the band was obviously the thing that everyone talks about first, which is their genre hopping, their stylistic, aesthetic differences album to album, how much music they make and how different it sounds. And yes, that is an important part of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard and something that I love about them as well. But there's a reason when I started a Substack, I started writing about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. And now when I'm starting a YouTube channel, I'm starting talking about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. And it's not just because of the music. It's about the band and how it operates outside of the music. And how much I think musicians of all genres, of all sizes, could really learn a lot from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. It's why I write about them. It's why I talk about them. I just think they're a great example to point to for how to do the music industry slightly different. So I thought for this video, we'd use King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but we'd look at what they do slightly different from the music industry to try and discover maybe some inspiration, maybe some things for us to take on, or for you to take on, I should say, in your own work, in your own world, to try. So why do I think King Gizzard are so different from what we're going to term, say, like modern music industry strategies and ideas and ways of operating and being? I would classify the industry as it is now, really optimizing towards being super polished and being super predictable. And by that I mean not just kind of top down, the record labels are wanting you to be a certain way, but I also mean the pressures from streaming and from algorithms, TikTok, Instagram, Spotify, when everything is tuned towards, hey, your step forward as an artist is to succeed with these algorithms, what the algorithms want, or what people tell you that they want, that's what becomes the common wisdom of what to do. And it does seem that, whether it's true or not, that has been interpreted as be polished. And by polished, I don't mean look professional, though in some aspects on, say, Instagram, all those things, that is kind of what it is. But even on TikTok, where polish takes on a different definition. So make polished doesn't mean looking high quality, high professionalism all the time. It just means fitting in with and knowing exactly what the algorithm and content looks like on each platform, and polishing yourself to be similar or the same as those things to give you the chance to succeed. And predictability is an obvious one. The fear of, well, not the fear, but the incentive structure of when one thing works, you yourself, the people around you, you just want to, you got this instinct to well, that worked, that hit, let's do that again. You start chasing that thing. That's predictability. You're told in a commercial industry that is about commodifying you as a product, easy categorization is a currency for that system. So being predictable means you're easy to categorize, which means you're making it easy for yourself to spread. This is in stark contrast to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, which leans into chaos, community, and constant creativity, I would say. Constant creation. And I don't mean content, which we'll get into, but just constant creativity. They jump from genre to genre. They aren't predictable. They've got an orchestral album and orchestral performances coming out. They've done acoustic records. They've done jazz collaboration records. They've done thrash records. They break these rules of the modern music industry and how you're supposed to carve a pathway to success for yourself. And at the same time, it's extremely hard to argue that they aren't, if not already, rapidly becoming one of the biggest, most successful current bands there is in the world today. My argument is that the root of this success is what I like to call being fan first. I'm going to talk about what being fan first is throughout this video, but I think it's good to define it by its opposite. And the opposite, I think, and the thing that the modern music industry has really embraced is scarcity. So what do King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard do different to everyone else? I think they're fan first. Whereas the modern music industry often relies on scarcity to sell its products. Let's have a little closer look at 2 or 3 very distinct ways that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard break the rules of the modern music industry. And we'll start with a really, really common one that you hear as a rule from the music industry, which is find your sound and stick to it. I think this bit of wisdom comes again from that pressure from algorithms, mixed with that traditional easy categorization for commoditization of your musical product that we've carried over from the traditional music industry. When a band is consistent in how it sounds, it's easy to market. It's easy to embrace from a media perspective, radio, writing, that still exists, playlist pushers, radio pushers, all these people, if you are easy to categorize, you are easy to understand, you are easy to communicate, you are easy to work with, right? Your music is often also, and it doesn't have to be this way, but easily digestible is another way as well. But it's not exclusive. Metallica, we know what a Metallica album is going to sound like. Maybe that's not easily digestible, but it's very, very consistent. Same with AC/DC. But it's not only external pressure, it's natural internal pressure that drives this as well, where we're in music to communicate and to express ourselves, but we're all human, and having feedback and positive feedback to something we're expressing is extremely powerful. And so when we find that thing, we kind of go like, well, that's good. We categorize that as good ourselves, and we try and consistently hit that good thing, which works within the music industry to drive that consistency, but also that kind of bands being stuck in a lane. The real fear is that you'll put something out and the people that like your music will hate it. And new people won't like it either. And it's a real fear. And it's impossible to know often until you put it out that is going to happen. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, they've put out 26 studio albums since 2011. And I think it averages out to just under 2 albums a year. A lot of these albums are completely different from one another. And I guess there is a consistency to the lack of consistency, you can argue, but that's a bit of a stretch, I reckon. I think it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of creative balls, for lack of a better word, to take huge swings in lots of different directions and to really just embody whatever is exciting for the band at the time, and trusting that King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard fans, not every album lands for them. Speaking as one myself, not every album becomes an album I love or even listen to more than once, or even check out more than the single sometimes. But it doesn't need to. I have a trust with the band that they can go off into this, say, electronic zone, which is a world that I quite enjoy, but I have my taste within it, and what they were doing was really not to my taste. But I'm going to stick around because I know that in about at least 6 months' time, there's going to be an album completely different, probably far more up my alley. And I'm not just going to lose my interest in the band because of that. And when you put it that way, it's this kind of like trust and fandom of a band. Like, I like this band, I want to follow what they're doing. Music fans, separate from the mass public, I think deserve a lot more trust from their artists and from artists in general, that they will do that they aren't going to punish you or forget about you because you take one swing and subjectively they're not into it. When you say it out loud, though, it doesn't immediately make me think of the music industry, though, will and often can punish you for that, using the audience as an excuse, saying, oh, well, we just do what the audience does. But real audiences will stick with bands and will actually often embrace them trying things. And so it's this kind of fear born out of the unknown. That's why it's so important to kind of look at a band like King Gizzard and see them do all these things and kind of have this really public reminder that, like, oh yeah, my fans aren't fickle. Or if they are they really fans? And should you really worry about them? But real fans of yours, they're not going to ditch you because you take one big wild swing or a couple of swings that don't work and then put out a banger. They're going to be like, hell yeah, bangers are back. And they just won't mention the bad ones, you know? It's great to have King Gizzard out there to kind of point to as like, hey, this whole idea we have around finding your sound, being consistent, it's kind of just propelled a little bit by fear and maybe a little bit fuel on the fire by the music industry, and definitely guided inherently by algorithms and their control over being viewed, being seen. But it doesn't have to be this way. And that brings us to our next section, which is about scarcity. And it's this idea that the music industry will say that scarcity sells. But what King Gizzard might say, or might show, is that abundance might build more trust and benefit you in the long term. Here's a typical strategy to kind of identify that scarcity strategy, right? To really, really illuminate it. You've finished an album. It's done. And you know that your fans know it's done. When you put that first single out, you usually have it done and the first single is coming out, or close to done, right? Your fans know when they get singles and they get a release date for the record that it's already done. You could just give it to them right now. They go along, everyone goes along with this kind of make-believe WWE kayfabe style thing where we all just pretend that we couldn't just put the record out right now. Now, why do we do that? It's to create scarcity. It's to create hype. It's to say there's only this one little morsel of this whole big thing that's coming. And so that's really exciting because you can't have all that. We're not going to give you all this big thing. You've just got this little morsel, and you hope that the scarcity makes people really excited. And then you give them another little morsel to try and keep that excitement going, right? That's a classic scarcity strategy. Another way you can see these scarcity strategies is in the idea of don't play too many shows. Don't play too often. Make yourself scarce. It's all set around this traditional music industry, but not just music, a traditional sales idea of profiting off peaks. Don't sell anything, you go away, you keep yourself scarce so that when you've got something to sell, you go from 0 to 100, this big peak of everything's happening here, and you maximize your profits in that peak. Because the idea goes, if you were constantly selling concerts up to that point, then this doesn't seem as special anymore, and you might make less money. So you make yourself scarce, you drop yourself down, you stop playing too many concerts, and you have this one big concert a year, 2 big concerts a year, and you make all your money, right? That's a usual thing you hear. I'm not saying just go wild and everyone should just be playing shows all the time and it works for everyone, but I think people play less shows than they could get away with because they've not thought about exactly why they're going along with this scarcity strategy that is just a traditional common sense strategy now. And this is why King Gizzard, again, is really important. They have completely blown the scarcity strategy out of the water for themselves, right? And they've gone completely the other way. So it's multiple albums a year, it's constant touring, it's playing 5 shows in one city in a row, But because they've had all this momentum of and intention of just writing as much as they can and playing that much as they can, they've got this huge discography now, and they can play 5 nights in one city in a row, all different themed sets: acoustic night, thrash metal night, psych rock night. Again, this isn't the purpose of this video isn't to give you specific things for your band or you to do as an artist, exactly like King Gizzard does, but it's just showing that there is a professional, internationally successful band that is not adhering to this kind of hegemonic idea of how to release music and operate as a band, right? Music industry says scarcity. King Gizzard is showing, hey, you don't have to do it that way because we're doing this like overabundance thing and it's really working for us. Maybe there's another way it can work for you. And I think why it works is because instead of leveraging FOMO, essentially, they basically overfeed everyone. They go like, hey, we are going to give you everything that you could want and probably more. Speaking speaking for myself, I've been getting back into King Gizzard in the last week because they are currently on tour, just finished North America, going through Europe. They are live streaming on their YouTube the entirety of their concerts, every concert. And then in a few weeks after it's happened, they get fully uploaded to the YouTube to watch anytime you want. And so I've just spent the last week and a half watching hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of King Gizzard. And there's hours and hours and hours and hours and hours more that I could watch. And isn't that a great feeling? As a fan, I have that thing where I'm like, oh, I'm getting back into this band, or oh, I'm for the first time getting into this band. There is so much for me to discover and rediscover every time I come back. I'm not just going back and listening to my favorite album of the 5 and my favorite singles off the others, and I'm kind of burnt out on them again within a week, There is more King Gizzard that I could wrap my little ears around. And for me, that just seems like such more of not only a sustainable move for them, because it's only going to get bigger and bigger as they carry on, but for me as a fan, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm getting everything I want out of it. And it's such a fresh breath of air, honestly. And I think to go into our final section, this relationship between the band and the fans is one of the biggest things that it does differently to the modern music industry. I would say that the modern music industry's rule is media is your connection to your audience. Whether that is traditional media like radio or print, or modern media like social media. The idea is you need to engage with media, and media will then engage you with an audience. King Gizzard the Lizard Wizard, they just go directly to the audience. They play shows for the audience. They put music out directly to the audience. They even release albums free of copyright and just give them to their audience to reprint, to make their own versions of. And I think that results in a really different experience. When you're talking to media to talk to fans, there's a few things that go on as a fan in that transaction, right? So if I see you through that media channel, I'm seeing you as one of many, because that's a media channel. There's lots of things going on. So you're now in a kind of shop window, and you have no control over who you're putting next to most of the time, who you're put next to, who you're compared to most of the time. I'm also most likely getting my first taste of you through a screen. So looking at a phone and scrolling, it's media, or kind of, mindlessly clicking headlines on my laptop. It's basically through a screen. A lot of first interactions, but continued interactions with King Gizzard the Lizard Wizard is in person, or it's physical. So they tour so much. They're an incredible, unless you're in New Zealand, there's an incredible amount of shows to go to all the time, and they provide for the screen thing straight away as well, but on their own channel, not through media. So I can either go to a concert and have a physical experience, or I can go straight to them and have a secondary version of it. When they give albums away for free and say, hey, we want you to have this. We want you to print your own vinyl of this. We want you to create whatever you want to create. That lets fans have something physical, have a vinyl to hold on to, have artwork to hold on to. it allows for the fans to basically feel like they're part of the band now, right? They have produced something for and in their minds with King Gizzard the Lizard Wizard, and it's real. It's a real thing. Because there's no point taking Polygon to Arnaland, which they put out for free. There's no point, when they made it free, the people who are just going to listen to it on Spotify or listen to it on streaming, it doesn't change their experience whatsoever. But invested fans, music fans who probably buy vinyl records, probably go to shows, all these things, they have access to engaging with this free album in such a different way, in a way that no other band gives them, by printing their own, by going to a local record store who has printed their own, or King Gizzard even have an entire bootleg shop where they sell the people's versions of either live concert bootlegs, which they also distribute, or recorded albums they put out for you to buy and interact and swap with as fans. What do you think is a better experience for bonding yourself to a band? Is it seeing them on, say, like the Rolling Stone Instagram story, seeing them on TikTok doing a dance, or is it having your own special edition vinyl, or going multiple nights to a show to hear a different set every time, or being at home and streaming over YouTube live while a concert happens in Barcelona and Lisbon and feeling like you're part of it, feeling like you're there with the band? Community and creativity drives the fan base and audience for King Gizzard the Lizard Wizard. It's not reliant on viral sounds. It's not reliant on an algorithm delivering or a media responding to your PR or to your interview requests. They just go directly to fans. They continue creating things that their fans want to listen to and engage with, and they go and meet them. In some ways, I love it. It is fairly pretentious how much I love to think about this kind of music industry, musician, bands, things. But this is a case where it's like, it's also simultaneously not that deep. That's a great lesson from King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. The modern music industry, it seems so opaque and complex. The algorithmic lords, the content you need to become a content creator, you need to be a small business owner, you need to be a musician, you need to be all these things, right? And maybe it will work. We don't really know how the algorithms work, so maybe. Whereas King Gizzard hey, we're just going to write a lot of songs, we're going to play a lot of shows, and we're going to put a lot of stuff out, and basically everything we do you can kind of engage with. And it's just all about the music and all about our community of people who like our music. And that's kind of it. It's not that deep, and it seems to be working out pretty well for them. It's not to say that the modern music industry is bad, or you should say fuck it and just like blow it up or whatever, because it really, if you are Benny, if you are Lord, if you are a mass audience, world-class pop songwriter with the connections and the teams, this system is built to propel you to stardom. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that it's a square hole and there are way more round pegs than the music industry would want you to think. And maybe you're a bit of the wrong peg in the wrong hole, and you want to look at something different. I'm also not saying that you need to copy King Gizzard, that it's binary, that you either do what the music industry says or you be King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, because that won't work either. You need to it works because they are authentically like that. I couldn't do that. I could not be on the road as much as they're on the road. I don't write as easily and carefree as they do. I couldn't produce that amount of thing. It just wouldn't work for me. What I am saying with this video is that there are other options out there. I read a lot of Mark Fisher. He wrote Capitalist Realism, and it's about the idea that capitalism is so intense that you can't even imagine a different system other than capitalism. Living in a world without capitalism, you can't even imagine it anymore. It's so pervasive. Music industry can be a bit like that, where it just seems like it's so pervasive you can't even imagine that there's any other way to do it. But it's just not the case. And I use King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard in this video, but also like in my life to kind of make an example of like, there are other ways to do this. And a question that I would hope you to take away from this, that I ask myself, and I think more musicians should ask themselves, is when they're deciding on a strategy, when they're deciding on what they want to be doing, how they want to be putting things out, anything, I ask, and I think everyone should ask, is this for my fans or is this for something else? The answer might be for something else, and you might be like, actually, that something else is really good. I really want that. And that's cool. But I think more often than not, when you ask that question, you go, yeah, like, this isn't really for my fans. This is for a radio station or a streaming service that promises new fans at the expense of giving my current fans what they would probably really like. I think it's a really important question to ask, and one that isn't asked enough. And consider with that question what it means to be fan first, and how that would feel if you were a fan of a band that became a bit more fan first, that looked after you before it looked after the music industry or hypothetical new fans it could reach. How you would feel in relationship to that band, and maybe how it would change if they changed to that. I love talking about King Gizzard the Lizard Wizard. I think they're fantastic. Both what we've talked about today and how they operate, but also musically I really enjoy them as well. If you haven't got into them yet, I highly recommend it. I think a great starting point would actually be watching one of their KEXP live sessions. They've tended to use them, they've done quite a few now, and they tend to use them as little capsules of a certain sound or a certain album. They'll do the main suite from that album, and so you can find through those KEXPs a good flavor taste of a lot of the different sounds they do. I'd highly recommend starting there. My favorite record, I usually say Polygon Dwandaland, because I love the rhythms of it, and it's the most kind of like, it's a bit like Tool, and I kind of like that psych rock Tool. They have 26 albums, so there's going to be stuff in there you like. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you back, at the latest next week for another one. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. You can support me by subscribing and liking here, or going to the newsletter. If you really like what I'm doing, you could go and become a paid subscriber to the newsletter. At the moment, that's kind of the best way to support me, and also where I kind of tell, I put everything I do in there, but also kind of explain what I'm planning on doing, so you're way more in the loop than everyone else. But yeah, I really appreciate you being here. Hope you're having a good day. Isaac, more noise. I'm out.